The four gods of chaos, Tzeentch, Nurgle, Khorne, and Slaanesh. Well, there are about that many themes in this Precon as well. Okay, the Ruinous Powers deck is kind of all over the place. You have Instants and Sorceries Matters cards, you have Cascade cards, you have Demon Tribal, you have tokens. I mean, you have to pick one, but which one do you choose? Well, if you're like me, you'll make 3 decks. But let's talk about Abaddon first. But hey, if you're enjoying this content, like, subscribe, send me warm vibes through the roiling terror of the warp. Abaddon the Despoiler is 2 blue, black, and a red for a legendary creature, Astartes Warrior. It's a 5/5 with trample. Has Mark of Chaos Ascendant. During your turn, spells you cast from your hand with mana value X or less have Cascade, where X is the total amount of life your opponents have lost this turn. Okay, so each turn we want our opponents losing life. I mean, that's the goal of the game anyway. If we keep to a reasonable curve, we can cascade cards left and right if we stack on life loss and assume we'll be playing in a 4-player pod. This is an interesting commander that can stack a lot of value. So what are some cards in the Precon that are good to keep in Abaddon? Dark Apostle can be really good, but his ability is expensive. He's 3 and a red for a creature, Astartes Warlock. It's a 3/3 with Gift of Chaos. 3 and tap. The next non-creature spell you cast this turn has Cascade. The bonus here is that his ability can be activated at instant speed, so we can kind of hold up some mana if we have an instant to burn. And we got the Mutelith Vortex Beast. Sorry if I mispronounced this. It's 4 blue and a red for a creature, Mutant Beast with 6/6 with trample. Has Warp Vortex. When it enters the battlefield, flip a coin for each opponent you have. For each one you win, draw a card. For each one you lose, Mutelith Vortex Beast deals 3 damage to that player. This thing is great to cascade with if we can generate 6 damage. Plus we can draw cards, which is always good. It's got a decent stat block for the cost as well. Keeper of Secrets was one of the first models that I ever bought for Warhammer 40k, and back then it had a goat head. I don't know when it got this sexy, but it's 5 and a red for a creature demon with first strike and haste. It's a 6/4. Has Symphony of Pain. Whenever you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, Keeper of Secrets deals damage equal to that spell's mana value to target opponent. This is great in this deck, but geez, look at this art. I'm frightened. Anyway, it goes really well with Abaddon's ability and can be a frightful combat beast as well. Bloodthirster is 5 and a red for a creature demon, has flying and trample to 6/6. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, untap it. After this combat phase, there's an additional combat phase. It can't attack a player that has already attacked this turn. So it has flying, trample, very fair cost. It's a beast of shadow and flame. These big flying demons can help drive the damage home to increase our cascade ability with Abaddon. The Lord of Change is 6 and a blue for a creature demon. It's a 6/6 with flying and ward 3. It has Architect of Deception. When it enters the battlefield, draw 3 cards. I don't know how that makes him an Architect of Deception, alright? It basically just makes him a Sphinx of Uthun without the Fact or Fiction trigger. So this is one of Tzeentch's greatest servants. The most powerful of them wield fragments of his power over destiny. But he's going to come in and he's going to draw us cards, and hopefully we're going to cascade off of him. The Noise Marine is a 4 and a red creature, Astartes Warrior to 3/2. Also has Cascade. So if this gets Cascade, it gets a separate instance if it cascades off of Abaddon. Sonic Blaster. When it enters the battlefield, it deals damage equal to the number of spells you've cast this turn to any target. This dude is just hitting his solo and stomping around on stage like a Gwar reject. He has native Cascade, and that's a lot of fun. The Tallyman of Bananas is an interesting card and has a weird name. Creatures die all the time, so this is like a morbid opportunist with some life gain stapled on. Maybe a little worse, but I'm going to keep it in the deck and playtest it. Blood for the Blood God is a really powerful wheel effect that combos well with cards that kill creatures, like Blasphemous Act. I'm going to keep it in the deck and see how powerful it really is. Yeah, and so this card is fine. It can be a big power boost for our commander. Is also a removal spell. You kind of want these higher cost spells in here so you can cascade downward. I don't think I would keep this in a competitive version of the deck. I don't think it's really good enough for like high powered commander, but I mean, heck, dude, this is a casual game. Let's keep it real, okay? Just a side note here on additions, I kept the mana rocks mostly the same. This deck has really good rocks, but I added an Arcane Signet. It's unfathomable that that is not in this deck to start with. Also added a Felwar Stone, as this deck is very mana hungry with high converted mana cost. So we want to be dealing damage, but we also want to be drawing cards. Stormfist Crusader is a neat little card I use in Sir Gwyn. Okay, we're giving our opponents cards, but this is a casual format. I mean, listen, guys, this doesn't have to be CEDH all the time. It's okay. This is not high-powered commander. Believe me, it's fine. And this card will stick around because everybody likes it. Duskmantle Seer does a similar thing, except it can kind of whiff on lands or can shred somebody for 13 damage, including us. I like the flavor of this card as Abaddon is all about chaos, baby. Florian Vildaren Scion is 1 black and a red for a legendary creature, Vampire Noble. It's a 3/3 with first strike. At the beginning of your post-combat main phase, look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the total amount of life your opponents lost this turn. Exile one of those cards and put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. You may play the exile card this turn. I picked this guy because he kind of lets us dig deep into our library for draw effects or creature destruction effects or whatever we need. Plus it's like just a cool little guy because we're stacking on damage. Keen Duelist is 1 and a black for a creature, human wizard. It's a 2/2. At the beginning of your upkeep, you and target opponent each reveal the top card of your library. You each lose life equal to the mana value of the card revealed by the other player. You each put the card you revealed into your hand, so this is drawing us cards and damaging our opponents, which is what we want to do in this deck, brother. We have a couple really good pingers like Nettle Drone and Thermo Alchemist. These can be guaranteed damage and we need that, and they hit all opponents. Spawn of Mayhem is 2 black for a creature demon. It's a 4/4 with flying and trample. It has spectacle, 1 black. So at the beginning of your upkeep, it deals 1 damage to each player. Then if you have 10 or less life, put a +1/+1 counter on it. So if we cast this for its spectacle cost, we're still cascading for 4. This is a fantastic card. I love this thing. I have it in a bunch of decks. Very efficient for what it costs. Loyal Subordinate is a great card to effectuate life loss for our opponents, which we can turn into Cascade for Abaddon. I also love how in the art it's Liliana just kind of telling this dude, go get me some cheese, you loser. Look at this flamey guy. Chandra's Incinerator is 5 and a red for a creature elemental. It's a 6/6 with trample. It costs X less to cast, where X is the total amount of non-combat damage dealt to your opponents this turn. Whenever a source you control deals non-combat damage to opponent, Chandra's Incinerator deals that much damage to target creature or planeswalker that player controls. It has a nice stat block. It synergizes nicely with our pingers and Spawn of Mayhem and other things in the deck. The cost reduction is fantastic too. If we cast this for cheap, it still cascades at 6 mana value if we can stack on enough damage for Abaddon to trigger. We definitely want to include some cards that bring additional value when we cast spells from exile, like Prosper, which is now $1 billion for this card. It's a cool card if you have the budget. It's not in my budget version, but hey, throw it in there if you got it, but for now, get out of here, you horn guy. Now Feshni, now we're talking budget. This is 5 and a red for a creature, Beast Demon. It's 4/6 with flying. Whenever you cast a spell from exile, copy it. You may choose new targets for the copy. If it's a permanent spell, the copy gains haste, and at the beginning of the end step, sacrifice this permanent. Look at this, I love this. She's out there flying with her friends, having a great time, living her best life. Wild Magic Sorcerer is 3 and a red for a creature, Orc Shaman. It's a 4/3. The first spell you cast from exile each turn has Cascade. Fantastic in this deck, you want to get it out early. Alright, I also want to shout out Wound Reflection in a deck where we're damaging our opponents each turn. This card rocks. It was $4 after a reprint in Double Masters, and you know I bought one. Now it's up to $8-10, sadly. But this can really stack on the damage. It's great in a pseudo group slug deck like this. Unfortunately, it's not in the budget today, but if you have one, I'd throw it in. Also want to shout out Nightscape Familiar. This is one of those great little role players. It's 1 and a black for a creature zombie. It's a 1/1. Blue spells and red spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. It has 1 and a black regenerated. Cost reducers like this make casting our spells easier but don't affect the mana value for purposes of Cascade. From the rulings on Wild Magic Sorcerer, a spell's mana value is determined only by its mana cost. Ignore any alternative costs, additional costs, cost increases, or cost reductions. For example, Wild Magic Sorcerer's mana value is always 4. I also put in Ancestral Vision, Wheel of Fate, Profane Tutor, and Inevitable Betrayal. These are 0 cost spells that can be cascaded into and cast immediately without having to suspend them. You can cast a Soul Ring or a Wayfarer's Bauble and get Abaddon's Cascade trigger, and then cascade into one of these super powerful effects. There are quite a few wheel effects in this deck, and we're heavy into instants and sorceries in the budget deck list, so I stuck in Goblin Dark Dwellers. So it's 3 red for a creature goblin. It's a 4/4 with menace. When it enters the battlefield, you may cast target instant or sorcery card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard without paying its mana costs. If that spell will be put in your graveyard, exile instead. As far as I can ascertain, now I'm no judge, this card can interact with our suspend cards in the graveyard, and there's 15 total cards that it can interact with in our deck. Check out the deck list in the description, buddy. The tension in this deck is between guaranteed sources of damage and spells you can cascade with and into. It's chaotic, it's interactive, it's fun. Goldfish it. things can either go horribly awry, or you can just cascade into a Wayfarer's Bauble, or you can cascade into some really impactful spell. But when you give your soul to the powers of chaos, that's what happens, dude. Sometimes you wield unearthly cosmic power, and sometimes you end up as a nurgling. Oh yeah. What usually ends up happening is you have explosive turns 4, 5, and 6, and 7, hopefully end up ahead, and you tend to throw around lots of damage, which may end up killing you as well, but that's the price of power. I hope you enjoyed the video. Feel free to send me a like, a subscribe, and a doodly boodly dee. This is Nicky G from Better Commander, signing off.